Hi, welcome to Topic 7, Questionnaire and Form Design. The learning outcomes of the reading section, the student should be able to 1. Explain the purpose of a questionnaire and its objective. 2. Describe the process of designing a questionnaire, the steps involved, and the guidelines that must be followed at each step. 3. Discuss the observation form of data collection. The marketing research process is a recap of the process that we have mentioned earlier. All in all, there are 6 steps, and currently we're looking at Step 3, formulating a research design under questionnaire and form design. Step 3, formulating a research design, questionnaire and form design. Questionnaire definition. A questionnaire is a formalized set of questions for obtaining information for respondents. It is a structured technique that consists of a series of questions, written or verbal, that a respondent answers. It must translate the information needed into a set of specific questions that the respondents can and will answer. A questionnaire must uplift, motivate, and encourage the respondent to become involved in the interview, to cooperate, and to complete the interview. A questionnaire should minimize response error. Questionnaire design process. This section presents guidelines useful to beginner researchers in designing questionnaire. Although this rule can help you to avoid major mistakes, the fine-tuning of questionnaire comes from the creativity of a skilled researcher. Questionnaire design will be presented as a series of steps, as you can see in the following figure. Step 1. Specify the information needed. Step 2. Specify the types of interview methods. Step 3. Determine the content of individual questions. Step 4. Overcome the respondent's inability and/or unwillingness to answer. Step 5. Decide on the questionnaire structure. Step 6. Determine the question wordings. Step 7. Arrange the questions in proper order. Step 8. Choose the form and layout. Step 9. Reproduce the questionnaire. And lastly, Step 10. Pre-test the questionnaire. We will present guidelines for each step. In practice, the steps are interrelated, and the development of the questionnaire will involve some iteration and looping. For example, the researcher may discover the respondents misunderstood all possible wordings of a question. This may require a loop back to the earlier step of deciding on the question structure. Following the steps and guidelines presented in this lecture should result in a good questionnaire. For the second step in questionnaire design is to specify the interviewing method, something that has already been done at the earlier stage. An appreciation of how the types of interviewing method influence questionnaire design can be obtained by considering how the questionnaire is administered under each method. For example, in the department store project where questionnaires are done by mail, email, or internet. For mail questionnaires are usually self-administrated, so the question must be simple and detailed instruction must be provided. In computer-assisted personal interview, CAPI, and computer-assisted telephone interview, CATI, complex skip patterns and randomization of questions to eliminate order bias can be accommodated easily. For internet questionnaires, share many of the characteristics of a CAPI, but the email questionnaire have to be simpler. Questionnaire design for personal and telephone interview should be written in a conversational style. Telephone questionnaire. In telephone interview, the respondent interact with the interviewer but not face-to-face, and they do not see the questionnaire. This limits the type of question that can be asked to short and simple ones. In personal, in-home, and more intercept interview, respondents see the questionnaire and interact face-to-face with the interview. Thus, lengthy, complex, and varied questions can be asked. Step 3. Determine the content of individual questions. Once the information needed is specified and the types of interviewing method has been chosen, the next step is to determine individual question content. What to include in an individual question. Every question in a questionnaire should contribute to information needed or serve some specific purpose. If there is no satisfactory use for the data resulting from a question, the question should be eliminated. In certain situations, however, questions may be asked that are not directly related to the information that is needed but nevertheless serve some purpose. It is useful to some neutral question at the beginning of the questionnaire to establish information or involvement and rapport, particularly when the topics of the questionnaire is a sensitive issue. Sometimes filler questions are asked to disguise the purpose or sponsorship of the project. Rather than limiting the question to the brand of interest, questions about competing brands may be included to disguise the sponsorship. For example, a survey on personal computer sponsored by HP may also include filler questions related to Dell and Apple. Are several questions needed instead of one? Once we've ascertained that a question is necessary, we must make sure that it is sufficient to get the desired information. Sometimes, several questions are needed to obtain the required information in an unambiguous manner. Consider the following question. Do you think Sprite is a tasty and refreshing soft drink? A yes answer will presumably be clear, but what if the answer is no? Does this mean that the respondent thinks that the Sprite is not tasty, that it is not refreshing, or that it is neither tasty nor refreshing? Such a question is called double-barrel question, because two or more questions are combined into one. To obtain the required information unambiguously, two distinct questions should be asked. For example, do you think Sprite is a tasty soft drink? And do you think Sprite is a refreshing soft drink? Overcoming inability to answer. Researchers should not assume that respondents are able to provide accurate or reasonable answers to all questions. The respondents will be unable to respond accurately if they are not informed or unable to articulate their responses. Is the respondent informed? Respondents are often asked about topics on which they are not informed. The husband may not be informed about monthly expenses for groceries and departmental store purchases if it is the wife who make these purchases, or vice versa. Research has shown that respondents will often ask questions even they are uninformed. In situations where not all respondents are likely to be informed about the topic of interest, questions that measure familiarity, product use, and past experience should be asked before questions about the topics themselves. Such questions enable the researcher to filter out respondents who are not adequately informed. Adorno options appear to reduce uninformed response without reducing the overall response rate or the response rate for questions about which the respondents have information. Hence, this option should be provided when the researcher expects the respondents may not be adequately informed about the subject of questions. Also, in some cases, it may be appropriate to give respondents relevant information about the brand or product before asking them to express their opinion. The ability of respondents can also be enhanced by asking questions in a way that will help them remember a response. Can the respondent articulate? Respondents may be unable to articulate certain types of responses. For example, if asked to describe an atmosphere of the departmental store, they will prefer to patronize. Most respondents may be unable to phrase their answer. On the other hand, if the respondents are provided with the alternative description of the store atmosphere, they will be able to indicate the one they like the best. If respondents are unable to articulate their response to a question, they are likely to ignore the question and may refuse to respond to the rest of the questionnaire. Thus, respondents should be given aids such as pictures, maps, and description to help them articulate their responses. Overcoming unwillingness to answer. Even if respondents are able to answer a particular question, they may be unwilling to do so either because too much effort is required or the information request is sensitive. Effort required of the respondents. Most respondents are unwilling to devote a lot of effort to provide information. Hence, the researcher should minimize the effort required of the respondent by providing the respondent's option. Suppose the researcher is interested in determining from which departments in the store the respondent purchased merchandise on the most recent shopping trip. The information can be obtained in at least two ways. The researcher could ask the respondent to list all the departments from which merchandise was purchased on the most recent shopping trip, or the researcher could provide a list of departments and ask the respondent to check the applicable one, as shown in the example here. The second option is preferred because it requires less effort from the respondents. Overcoming unwillingness to answer sensitive information. Respondents are unwilling to disclose at least accurately sensitive information because this may cause embarrassment or threaten the respondent's prestige or self-image. If pressed for answer, respondent may give biased response, especially during personal interviews. Sensitive topics include money, family life, political and religious beliefs, and involvement in car accidents or crimes. Respondents may be encouraged to provide sensitive information that they are otherwise unwilling to give by using the following desensitizing technique. 1. Place sensitive topic at the end of the questionnaire. By then, initial mistrust has been overcome, rapport has been created, the legitimacy of the project has been established, and respondents are more willing to give information. 2. Preface the question with a statement that the behavior of interest is common. For example, before request information on credit card debt, say, recent studies show that most Americans are in debt. This technique is called the use of counter-biasness statement. 3. Ask the question using third-person technique. In other words, phrase the question as is referred to other people. 4. Provide response category rather than asking for a specific figure. Do not ask, what is your household annual income? Instead, ask the respondent to check the appropriate income category under 25,000, 25,001 to 50,000, 50,001 to 75,000, or over 75,000. In personal interview, give the respondent's card that lists the number choice. The respondent then indicate the response by number. Step 5. Decide on the question structure. A question may be unstructured or structured. In the following section, we define unstructured questions and discuss their relative advantages and disadvantages, and then consider the major types of structured questions such as multiple choice, dichotomous, and scale. Unstructured questions are open-ended questions that respondents answer in their own words. They are also referred to as free response or free answer questions. The following are some examples. What is your occupation? Who is your favorite singer? Open-ended questions are good at first question on the topic. They enable the respondent to express general attitudes and opinions that can help the researcher interpret their response to structured questions. Unstructured questions have a much less biasing influence on response than structured questions. Hence, unstructured questions are used in exploratory research. A principal disadvantage of unstructured questions is that the potential for the interviewer bias is high. Whether the interviewers record the answer or written down only the main points, the data depend on the skills of the interviewers. Another major disadvantage of unstructured questions is that the coding of response is costly and time-consuming. The coding procedure required to summarize response in a format useful for data analysis and interpretation can be extensive. By their very nature, unstructured or open-ended questions give extra weight to respondents who are more articulate. Also, unstructured questions are not suitable for self-administrated questionnaire because respondents tend to be more brief when they are writing rather than speaking. In general, open-ended questions are useful in exploratory research and as opening questions. Otherwise, the disadvantage outweigh the advantage in a large survey. Structured questions. Specify the set of response alternatives and the response format. A structured question may be multiple choice, dichotomous, or scale. In multiple choice questions, the researcher provides a choice of answers and respondents are asked to select one or more alternatives given. Considering the following questions, example, do you intend to buy a new car within the next 6 months? The response alternative should include the sets of all possible choice. The general guideline is to list all alternatives that may be of importance and include an alternative label. Others, please specify. The response alternative should be mutually exclusive. Respondents should also be able to identify one and only one alternative unless the researcher specifically allows two or more choices. Multiple choice questions overcome many of the disadvantages of open-ended questions because interviewer bias is reduced and because these questions are administered quickly. Also, coding and processing of data are much less costly and time-consuming. In self-administrated questionnaire, respondent cooperation is improved if the majority of questions are structured. Multiple choice questions are not without disadvantages. Considerable effort is required to design effective multiple choice questions. Exploratory research using open-ended questions may be required to determine the appropriate response alternatives. It is difficult to obtain information or on alternatives not listed, even if an others please specify category is included. Respondents tend to choose among the list alternatives. In addition, showing respondents the list of possible answers produce biased response. Dichotomous questions has only two response alternatives, yes or no, agree or disagree, and so on. Often, the two alternatives' interests are supplemented by a neutral alternative such as no opinion, don't know, both, or none. The question asked before about intention to buy a new car as a multiple choice question can also be asked as a dichotomous question. Do you intend to buy a new car within the next 6 months? Yes? No? The decision to use dichotomous questions should be guided by whether the respondents approach the issue as a yes or no question. The general advantages and disadvantages of dichotomous questions are very similar to those multiple choice questions. Dichotomous questions are the easiest type of question to code and analyze, but they have one acute point. The respondent can be influenced by the wording of the question. To illustrate the statement, individuals are more to blame than social conditions for crime and lawlessness in this country, produce agreement from 59.6% of the respondents. However, on a matched sample that responds to the opposition statement, social conditions are more to blame than individual for crime and lawlessness in this country produced 43.2%, as opposed to 40.4% expected based on agreed with the opposition statement. Agreed. To overcome this problem, the question should be framed in one way or one half of the questionnaire and in the opposite way on the other half. This is referred to as a split ballot technique. Scaling. Numerically equal distance on the scale represent equal values in the characteristic being measured. Here in our example, scaling is a process by which respondent will be assigned an overall attitude scoring from 1 to 5 with regards to the intention to buy a new car within the next 6 months. The following two slides give a summary of the advantages and disadvantages of the unstructured and structured questionnaire. Determine the question wordings. Question wording is the translation of the desired question content and structure into words that respondent can clearly and easily understand. Deciding on question wordings is perhaps the most critical and difficult task in developing a questionnaire. If a question is worded poorly, respondents may refuse to answer it or may answer it incorrectly. To avoid this problem, we offer the following guidelines. 1. Define the issue. 2. Use ordinary words. 3. Use unambiguous words. 4. Avoid leading questions. And 5. Use positive and negative statements. Firstly, define the issue. A question should clearly define the issue being addressed. Beginning journalists are admonished to define the issue in terms of who, what, when, where, why, and ways. The 6 W's. Who, what, when, and where are particularly important and can also serve as a guideline for defining the issue in a question. Consider the following question. Which brand of shampoo do you use? On the surface, this question may seem well defined, but we may reach a different conclusion when we examine under the microscope of who, what, when, and where. Who in this instance refers to the respondent. It is not clear, though, whether the researcher is referring to the brand the respondent used personally or the brand used by the household. What is the brand of shampoo? However, what if more than one brand of shampoo is used? Should the respondent mention the most preferred brand, the brand used most often, the brand used most recent, or the brand that comes to mind first? When it's not clear, does the researcher means last time, last week, last month, last year, or even or ever? As for where, it is implied that the shampoo is used at home, but this is not stated clearly. Our analysis may be summarized as the following. A better wording for this question would be the following. Which brand or brands of shampoo have you personally used at home during the last month? In this case, more than one brand. Please list all brands that applies. Use ordinary words. Ordinary words should be used in the questionnaire, and they should match the vocabulary level of the respondents. For example, do you think the distribution of the soft drink is adequate? You should use ordinary such as, do you think the soft drinks are readily available when you want to buy them? Using unambiguous words. The words used in the questionnaire should have a single meaning that is known to all respondents. A number of words that appear to be unambiguous have different meanings to different people. These words include usually, normally, frequently, often, regularly, occasionally, and sometimes. Consider the following question. In a typical month, how often do you shop in the departmental stores? Never, occasionally, sometimes, often, or regularly. The answer to this question are fraught with response bias because the word used to describe category labels have different meanings for different respondents. 3 respondents who shop once a month may check 3 different categories as occasionally, sometimes, and often. A much better wording for this question should be the following. In a typical month, how often do you shop in the departmental store? Less than once, 1 or twice, 3 or 4 times, more than 4 times. Note that this question provides a consistent frame of reference for all respondents. Response categories have been objectively defined, and the respondents are no longer free to interpret them in their own way. Avoid leading or biasing question. A leading question is one that cues the respondent to what answer is desired or leads the respondent to answer in a certain way. Some respondents have a tendency to agree with whatever way the question is leading them to answer. This tendency is known as a yay saying, and the result is a bias called acquisitions biasness. Consider the following question, which is meant to determine the American preference for the domestic or imported automobiles. Do you think that patriotic Americans should buy imported automobiles when that would put American labor out of work? This question would lead respondents to a no answer. After all, how can patriotic Americans put American labor out of work? Therefore, this question would not accurately determine the preference of Americans for imported versus domestic automobile. A better question would be, do you think that Americans should buy imported automobiles? Bias may also arise when respondents are given cues about sponsor of the project. Respondents tend to respond favorably towards the sponsor. The question, is Colgate your favorite toothpaste? Is likely to bias respondents in favor of Colgate. A more unbiased way of obtaining this information would be to ask, what is your favorite brand of toothpaste? And see if Colgate is mentioned. Dual statements, positive and negative. Many questions, particularly those measuring attitudes and lifestyles, are worded as statements to which respondents indicate their degree of agreement or disagreement. Evidence indicates that the response obtained is influenced by the directory of the statements, whether they are stated positively or negatively. In these cases, it is better to use dual statements, some of which are positive and the other negatives. Two different questionnaires could be prepared. One questionnaire could contain half negative and half positive statement in an interspersed way. The direction of this statement would be reserved in the second questionnaire. Step 7. Arrange the question in proper order. Opening questions can be crucial in gaining the confidence and cooperation of the respondents. The opening question should be interesting, simple, and non-threatening. Questions that ask respondents for their opinion can be a good opening questions because most people like to express their opinions. Sometimes such questions are asked even though they are unrelated to the research problem and their response are not analyzed. In some instances, it is necessary to screen or qualify the respondents or determine whether a respondent is eligible to participate in the interview. Type of information. The type of information obtained in the questionnaire may be classified as basic information, classification information, and identification information. Basic information relates directly to the research problem. Classification information consists of socioeconomics and demographics characteristics used to classify the respondents and understand the result. Identification information includes the respondent's name, postal address, email address, and telephone number. Identification information may be obtained for a variety of purposes, including verifying that the respondent listed were actually interviewed, remitted promised incentive, and so on. As a general guideline, basic information should be obtained first, followed by classification, and finally identification information. The basic information is of greatest importance to the research project and should be obtained first. Difficult questions or questions that are sensitive, embarrassing, complex, or dull should be placed in the late in the sequel. After rapport has been established and the respondents become involved, they are less likely to object to this question. Thus, in the department store project, information about credit card debt was asked at the end of the section on the basic information. Likewise, income should be the last question in the classification section, and the respondent telephone number should be the final item in the identification section. Effect on subsequent question. Question asked early in the sequel can influence response to subsequent questions. As a rule of thumb, general questions should precede specific question. This prevents specific question from biasing response to a general question. Consider the following sequel of questions. What considerations are important to you in selecting a departmental store? Question 2. In selecting a departmental store, how important is convenience of location? Note the first question is general, whereas the second is specific. If this question were asked in the reverse order, Respondent will be curious about inconvenience of location and will be more likely to give this response to the general question. Going from general to specific is called the funnel approach, as illustrated in the diagram here. The funnel approach is particularly useful when information has to be obtained about respondents' general choice behavior and their evaluation of specific products. Sometimes, the inverted funnel approach may be useful. In this approach, questioning begins with specific question and concludes with general question. The respondents are compelled to provide specific information before making general evaluations. This approach is useful when respondents have no strong feeling or have not formulated a point of view. Logical order. Questions should be asked in the logical order. All the questions that deals with a particular topic should be asked before beginning a new topic. When switching topic, brief transition phrases should be used to help respondents switch their train of thoughts. Branching questions should be designed carefully. Branching questions are questions that direct respondents to different places in the questionnaire based on how to respond to the question at hand. These questions ensure that all possible contingencies are covered. They also help to reduce interviewer and respondent error and encourage complete response. The general order of question is outlined in the following next two tables. Step 8. Choose the form and layout. The format, spacing, and positioning of the question can have significant effect on the results. This is particularly important for self-administrated questionnaire. It is good practice to divide a questionnaire into several parts. Several parts may be needed for questions pertaining to the basic information. The question in each part should be numbered, particularly when branching questions are used. Numbering of questions also makes coding of response easier. The questionnaire themselves should be numbered serially. This facilitates the control of questionnaire in the field as well as the coding and analysis. Numbering makes it easy to account for the questionnaire and to determine if any have been lost. A possible exception to this rule is mail questionnaire. If these are numbered, respondents assume that a given number identifies a particular respondent. Some respondents may refuse to participate or may answer differently under this condition. Following is an example of a pre-code questionnaire. The questions are listed and the codes numbers are assigned accordingly to the questions. Step 9. Reproduction of the questionnaire. How a questionnaire is reproduced for administration can influence the result. For example, if the questionnaire is reproduced on a poor quality paper or is otherwise shabby in appearance, the respondent will think the project is unimportant and the quality of response will obviously be affected. Therefore, the questionnaire should be reproduced on good quality paper and have a professional appearance. Each question should be reproduced on a single page or a double page spread. A researcher should avoid splitting a question, including its response category. Split question can mislead the interviewer or the respondent into thinking that the question has ended at the end of a page. This will result in answers based on incomplete questions. Vertical response column should be used for individual question. It is easier for interviewer and respondent to read down a single column rather than sideways across 7 columns. Sideways formatting and splitting, done frequently to conserve space, should be avoided. The tendency to crowd questions together to make the questionnaire look rather short should be avoided because it can lead to errors. And finally, the last step, step 10, pre-testing. Pre-testing refers to the testing of the questionnaire on a small sample of respondents to identify and eliminate potential problems or bugs. Even the best questionnaire can be improved by pre-testing. As a general rule, a questionnaire should not be used in the field without adequate pre-testing. A pre-testing should be extensive. All aspects of questionnaire should be tested, including question content, wording, SQL, form and layout, question difficulty, and instructions. The respondents in the pretest should be familiar to those who will be included in the actual survey in terms of background characteristics, familiarity of the topics, and attitudes and behavior of interest. In other words, respondents for the pretest and for actual survey should be drawn from the same population. Pretests are best done by personal interview, even if the actual survey is to be conducted by mail, telephone, or electronic means, because interviewers can observe respondents' reaction and attitudes. After the necessary change have been made to the survey, another pretest should be conducted by mail, telephone, or electronic means if those methods are to be used in the actual survey. The later pretest should review problems particularly to the interviewing method. To the extent possible, a pretest should involve administrative the questionnaire in an environment and context similar to that of the actual survey. Ordinarily, the pretest sample size is small, varying from 15 to 30 respondents for the initial testing. Depending on the heterogeneity of the target population, the sample size can increase substantially if the pretesting involves several stages or waves. The questionnaire should be revised to correct for the problem identification during pretesting. After each significant revision of the questionnaire, another pretest should be conducted using a different sample of respondents. Some pretesting involves several stages. One pretest is a bare minimum. Pretesting should be continued until no further changes are needed. Finally, the respondents obtained from the pretest should be coded and analyzed. Observational forms are formed for recording observational data are easier to construct than questionnaire. The researcher need not be concerned with the psychological impact of the question and the way they are asked. The researcher need to only develop a form that identifies the required information clearly, make it easy for the fieldworker to record the information accurately, and simplify the coding, entry, and analysis of the data. The form and layout as well as the reproduction or observation form should follow the same guidelines discussed for questionnaire. Finally, like questionnaire, observational forms also require adequate pretesting. The following slides give a summary of the questionnaire design process in the form of a checklist. Please spend some time to read through them. Kindly log on to Socrates to do the online quiz. RRTA test, kindly take note of the dates, the time, and the venue. Following are the topics that are to be tested. Please spend some time to revise all your lectures and tutorials on the above topics. A summary of the mind mapping of the subject that is being covered today. Thank you.